When Max heard that his first love had divorced, he became restless. Later, when Freya returned to the country, he abandoned me, who was 5 months pregnant, just to party with Freya. When I called Max, Freya answered and told me she was helping Freya drink. Max's voice came through the phone. "My Freya can't drink, don't always bully her." After the party ended, Max asked me to pick him up, and I rushed over with my big belly. I only then found out that to please Freya, he had bet on me and our unborn child. "Since you bet on me and our child, how could I let you win?" 1. It was 12 midnight, and I still couldn't sleep. Today was the day Freya returned home, and no matter how much I tried to stop him, Max insisted on picking her up and throwing a grand welcome party. "Daisy, you can't be so selfish. Freya just got divorced and she really needs someone to be with. I'm just going to keep her company, I'm not doing anything else. You're pregnant now, so don't go running around. Just stay home and wait for me to come back." I looked down at my slightly protruding belly and gave a bitter smile. So he still knew I was pregnant. Standing at the bedroom door, I asked reluctantly, "She needs someone to be with. What about me and the baby?" Max frowned slightly, clearly impatient. He quickly put on his coat. "All right, can you stop being so dramatic? Daisy, don't think that having a child can trap me. A child is not a tool for you to compete for my attention. If I had known it would be like this, I shouldn't have married you on impulse in the first place." With that, Max slammed the door and left me alone at home. His words were like knives stabbing into my heart. My hand trembled as I tried to steady myself. Max didn't love me, even though we had been together for 5 years, he still didn't love me. I sat on the sofa for hours, during which time I called Max 3 times. He didn't answer 2 of them and answered 1. But it was Freya who answered the phone. "Hello? Who is this? Who is this?" I bit my lip and swallowed my tears, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's me." I tried to keep my tone as calm as possible, not letting the other person hear my crying. Freya was stunned, and soon there was a sharp laugh from the other end of the phone. "Oh, it's Daisy. What's up? If you have something to say to Max, just tell me he's..." Freya blushed slightly, her voice filled with coyness. "He's helping me drink. These people are really something. They haven't changed since school days. Seeing that I rarely come back, they all want to get me drunk. If it weren't for Max standing in front of me, I would have gotten drunk today. Max, you're not being fair. Freya is back, and you're drinking so much. What about your wife? Get lost. My Freya can't drink, don't always bully her." "Oh, you're Freya? Max, have you forgotten that you have a wife? I heard your wife is pregnant, and you're out here drinking for someone else. Isn't your wife going to be jealous?" With a drunken look, Max looked at the bright and beautiful Freya, then thought of me who was pregnant and couldn't help but frown. "Is Daisy even comparable to Freya? Don't look at that woman pretending to be decent outside, she's actually a bitch. She forced me to marry her and have a child with her, otherwise I would have." "Max! Stop it!" Freya deliberately shouted. She had never hung up the phone, just to let me hear it more clearly. She apologized to me somewhat embarrassedly. "I'm so sorry, Daisy. Max is drunk. It's just a joke, don't take it to heart." "Bitch." I didn't say anything, I just hung up the phone. Unbeknownst to me, Freya had a triumphant smile on her face. I threw down my phone and curled up in a corner of the sofa, tears streaming down my face. At last year's engagement party, all of Max's friends surrounded me and forced me to drink. In order to not spoil everyone's fun, I drank 1 cup after another. Max sat in a corner and kept calling someone on the phone, looking anxious. Someone asked him if he wanted to come over and drink with me, but he said, "Drinking a few more cups won't kill you. She can drink, why do I have to go and stop her?" I ended up in the hospital that day with a stomach bleed, and Max stayed by my side, full of complaints. "If you can't drink, then don't drink. Why pretend to be tough? Do you have to show off in front of my friends?" Perhaps from that moment on, I should have figured it out. If Freya had answered Max's call that day, our engagement party would probably have ended in disaster. Time passed slowly, and at 12 midnight, Max finally called me. Looking at the familiar number, I was very conflicted. I wanted to ignore his call out of spite, but on second thought, I couldn't resist and picked up the phone. Soon, Max's drunken voice came from the other end of the phone. "Daisy, I feel so bad, my head is spinning. I think I've had too much to drink, can you come pick me up?" 2. I wanted to call him an asshole and hang up, but thinking of the baby in my belly, I got up, took my car keys, and went out to pick him up in the middle of the night. We lived in the suburbs, where streetlights were few and far between. The sky inexplicably started to rain heavily. Just as I picked up my phone to answer Max's call, a large truck sped straight towards me from the nearby intersection. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a hospital bed. The room was empty, except for a young nurse by my side. When she saw me awake, she called the doctor, who told me that I had lost the baby, the hit-and-run driver had fled, and a night shift police officer had brought me here. I touched my flat belly, and a myriad of thoughts flooded my mind, sadness and regret. I picked up my phone and tried to call Max, only to find that I had 20 missed calls, all from him. I sniffed and called him back, only to hear Max's furious voice on the other end. "Daisy! Why did you only answer now? Didn't I tell you to come pick me up? Where are you? Are you dead? Do you know that because you were late, Freya lost $500? You knew we were betting and you wanted to embarrass Freya, didn't you?" I bit my lip, my voice almost choked. "I didn't." But Max didn't give me a chance to speak. "Daisy, how could you be so vicious? You know Freya just got divorced and she really needs comfort, couldn't you just go along with her? I'll give you half an hour, if you're not here by then, I won't be coming back tonight." My hand trembled, and the phone slipped from my hand onto the bed. I suppressed my sadness and sneered. "Then don't come back. Never come back." I don't know what Max said after that. I only know that after hanging up the phone, he never called me again, and he didn't come back all night. I got the fully formed fetus back from the doctor. I looked at the tiny child, no bigger than a fist, and tears streamed down my face. I never thought my first meeting with her would be a farewell. I put her in a beautiful box and held her in my arms, crying over and over again. As soon as it got light, I dragged my broken body back home. Everything inside was exactly the same as when I left. I looked at the wedding photo on the living room wall and lost my mind. In the photo, I was smiling brightly, in stark contrast to my haggard appearance now, while Max still had a sarcastic smile on his face. When I was in high school, the first time I saw Max was the day he and Freya separated at the school gate. Max begged Freya not to leave, but Freya resolutely abandoned him. I watched the sunny boy with tears on his face, and my heart felt like it had been struck by Cupid's arrow. After that, I would often appear in front of Max, comforting him when he was hurt, caring for everything about him, and even giving up my studies to tutor him. With my persistence, Max was moved and confessed his love to me on the day of graduation. "Daisy, I like you, let's be together. I'll be good to you for the rest of my life." Any girl who had a boy she liked for so long suddenly confessed to her would have cried with joy, and that's exactly what I did. In order to be with Max every day, I gave up my original dream and attended the same university as him. We were together for 4 years in college and got married after graduation. We had a child less than a year later. I thought our life would get better and better until he found out that Freya had divorced and returned home, and everything changed. Max started to pick on my flaws. He always complained that I couldn't do anything right, but at the same time he wanted me to be magnanimous and accept him, saying it was all for me and for the good of our family. But in a moment of anger, he would say hurtful things, saying I was not as good as Freya in any way, and that he shouldn't have married me but waited for Freya for a year. I thought it was just a slip of the tongue, but later I found out that the reason he confessed to me that year after graduation was because Freya got engaged that day, and he was just angry and wanted to find comfort. 3. The heavy sound of the door opening pulled me out of my memories. I turned around and saw Max returning, full of spring. He was wearing a white shirt I had never seen before, his face was flushed, probably from not being sober yet, and there was a small red mark on his neck that was particularly eye-catching. When he saw me, the joy on his face immediately vanished. "Hey, I knew it, you didn't go pick me up yesterday." My heart skipped a beat, and my hands holding the box tightened unconsciously. His eyes fell on my gift box, and a hint of triumph flashed in his eyes. "Don't think that giving me a gift will make everything go away." He snatched the gift box from my hand, shook it, and found it not very heavy, so he threw it onto the dining table in disgust. "It's so light, it can't be anything good." My eyes followed the gift box, which Max threw carelessly on the table. He didn't even open it to take a look. I suddenly wondered, if he knew what was inside, would he still say that? From the moment Max entered the door until now, he hadn't noticed at all that my small belly had flattened. Perhaps from the beginning, his eyes had never really been on me. The 5 years of our relationship felt like a joke. Max didn't stay home for too long. He changed his clothes and went to work. I was exhausted by this relationship, perhaps it was time to let go. I was originally married far away from home, and I had no one to rely on in this city, but fortunately my parents still loved me. They were afraid that I would suffer, so they specially bought me a house in this city before I got married. They said, "Having a house is like having a support. If you are wronged in the future, you can move out anytime." Thinking of my parents thousands of miles away, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. I found my lawyer best friend and sent him a message saying I wanted a divorce. He didn't say anything, just replied, "Got it." I adjusted my mood and decided to go check out the house. Since I got married to Max, I had hardly been there. As soon as I reached the door, I smelled the aroma of food coming from inside. I thought it was the neighbor's house cooking, so I didn't think much of it. I entered the door password, no matter how many times I tried, it failed. I would never forget the password for this door, it was my birthday. Someone changed the password. "Max, dinner is ready, come and try it." A woman's voice came from inside the house, along with another man's praise. I couldn't mistake that voice. My hand paused in mid-air, and I felt the anger in my heart could no longer be suppressed. My insides felt like they were being stabbed by needles. I had installed a surveillance camera in the house, even though I didn't live here. I took out the receipt and checked the surveillance footage. Freya was wearing a low-cut dress and a miniskirt, and she was wearing the apron I bought, holding a plate of food and walking towards the living room. At that moment, I felt my head was filled with blood, and I wanted to kick the door open. Bang, bang, bang. Open the door. This is my house. It's the house my parents worked hard for half their lives to buy for me. I knocked hard on the door, my hand ached when it hit the door, but I didn't stop. Coming, who is it? Why are you knocking on my door in the middle of the day?" Freya walked over impatiently to open the door, and when she saw me, she was stunned for a moment, then an embarrassed smile appeared on her face. I snorted. "You said this is your house?" "4. Freya, who's here?" Max came over after hearing the sound. Standing beside Freya, his face turned dark as soon as he saw me, and he looked me up and down with contempt. "Why are you here?" I paused, my voice heavy with coldness. "This is my house, why can't I come?" I walked straight through the two of them. The arrangement of the room had changed slightly, and there were 3 unfinished vegetarian dishes on the dining table. Max was very picky about food. Over the years, in order to cater to his taste, my hands had been scalded countless times, but he was still not satisfied. Now I understood, he didn't dislike the food, but me. Freya, standing behind me, stepped forward first and said awkwardly, "I'm sorry, Daisy, I didn't know this house was yours. I just got back to the country and had nowhere to go, so Max let me stay here. I didn't mean anything else, it's just. Now that you know, you can get out." I turned my head coldly, and when my icy gaze met Freya's, I clearly saw the unwillingness in her eyes. Freya looked at Max lie, as if she was acting coquettishly and complaining. "It's all your fault. I told you not to come, and now look, you've made Daisy misunderstand, I'll just leave." Her tears came easily, and her pitiful and charming appearance instantly captured Max's heart. A beautiful woman crying often moves people. Max reached out lovingly and put his hand on Freya's shoulder to comfort her, and Freya leaned on him cooperatively. If I hadn't been there, these two would have looked like a loving couple. My sneer caught Max's attention, and he pointed at me and scolded. "Daisy! Are you never going to end this? This house is yours, but don't forget, we're married, so this is also my house. I can let whoever I want to live here. It has nothing to do with you. Are you deliberately following me here today? We're already married, can't we have a little more trust between husband and wife? Besides, the house is empty anyway, so what if Freya lives here? You won't lose anything. If you want rent, I'll give it to you." With that, Max took out his wallet, took out $1,000 and slapped it in my face. Seeing my embarrassed appearance, Freya couldn't help but smile slightly. She acted like a caring rose, soothing Max's agitated emotions. "Okay, Max, don't be angry, it's my fault, I shouldn't have come back to disturb your life at this time. Daisy is still pregnant, look at the child's sake, don't, Daisy, your belly." Halfway through her sentence, Freya looked at my flat belly. At this moment, Max also noticed something different about me. He stared at my belly in shock, ignoring Freya, who had not yet stood firm, and intuitively rushed to me to examine it carefully. After confirming that my belly had deflated, he grabbed my wrist angrily, his eyes bloodshot. "Good for you, Daisy. You were pretending to be pregnant. Weren't you 5 months pregnant? Where's the baby?" "Baby?" I almost laughed out loud. Freya, however, hid her joy, her brows furrowed slightly as she stepped forward. "It's okay, Max, Daisy loves you too much, so she wanted to use the child to tie you to her side." In a few words, they put the blame of losing a child on a mother. I ruthlessly slapped Max's hand away, and my cold expression made Max a little at a loss. I took the miscarriage report from my bag and slapped it in his face, learning from Max's method, which caught Max off guard. Freya wanted to say something, but she was shocked by my murderous gaze. I said expressionlessly, "The baby is gone, I did go to pick you up yesterday, but I had a car accident on the way, it was a girl, you haven't met her yet. But you will soon. She's on the table in the house." Max couldn't believe it. Holding the examination report in his hand, he was stunned for a long time. The air was instantly silent, and a touch of redness appeared in the corners of Max's eyes unconsciously. Before he could speak, I said directly, "Max, let's get a divorce." 5. Max heard my words, he was stunned for 3 seconds, clenched the examination report in his hand, and his handsome eyebrows knitted together. "Are you threatening me with divorce?" "Threatening?" I gave a self-mocking sneer. "Are you so sure I can't live without you?" Looking at the man I once loved deeply, even though I had made up my mind to leave, I couldn't help but feel a pang of pain. I always stubbornly believed that being with Max was a test given to me by fate. Now I realize that this is not a test, it's clearly a tribulation. Max seemed to sense something, he remained silent, and his 2 starry eyes stared at me fixedly. Feeling my unease, Freya took a step back and secretly shed tears. "I'm sorry, really, I'm sorry, it's all my fault, otherwise Daisy wouldn't have, Daisy, your baby is gone, I'm really sorry, I'll move out of here right away." For the first time, Max didn't rush to coax her as usual, but instead folded up my examination report and put it in his trouser pocket. He walked up to me seriously. The sudden change made Freya forget even to cry, she just looked at us with resentful eyes. Max suddenly seemed to have aged a lot. He looked at me, and a hint of tenderness appeared in his eyes. "Daisy, be good, we will have children in the future. Go home first, let's talk about it when we get back, okay?" He thought he could coax me like before, and I would give in and go home to be a housewife, but he was wrong, he only got a cold and disdainful look from me. In the future? Where would we have a future? Seeing that I was not cooperating, he became inexplicably irritated. Freya doesn't have any relatives in this country, and you don't always have to be against her. Let her live here and you go home with me." At this point, Freya clenched her hand slightly, looking a little unwilling. She suddenly covered her stomach, nervously tugging at Max's clothes. "Max, my stomach hurts." Max frowned slightly. Although his movements were slow, he still turned around to support Freya. She looked at me triumphantly, but was still hesitant. "Max, you don't have to worry about me, just go back with Daisy." Faced with the weak and boneless Freya, he would always soften. I'll stay and take care of you, Daisy will understand." Max seemed a little hesitant, but made a choice within 3 seconds. With that, Max turned his head but did not meet my gaze. He looked away guiltily. "Daisy, go back first, and I'll come home to accompany you as soon as Freya is better." I sneered and shook my head. Without saying anything, I picked up my bag and left. Seeing that I left decisively this time, without crying or making a fuss, and without grabbing his collar and shouting, Max felt uncomfortable instead, and he was faintly uneasy. As soon as I went out the door, I called the police directly. "I want to report a case of trespassing." I hadn't had coffee since I was pregnant. Sitting in the cafe, Leo pushed the divorce agreement in front of me playfully. "You've made up your mind to get a divorce?" I nodded lightly. Leo showed 2 small tiger teeth. "You should have divorced a long time ago. I told you that guy wasn't right for you, but you wouldn't listen." I smiled bitterly. I was young and foolish, but now, I've figured it out. The vibration of my phone interrupted our conversation. Looking at the familiar number, I clicked my tongue. I forgot to block it. I answered Max's call, and on the other end of the line, there was not only Max's irritated scolding, but also Freya's tearful plea. "Daisy! I know you're upset about losing your child, but you shouldn't take it out on Freya. What did Freya do to you? It's not her fault that you lost your child. I've already said that she has nowhere to go after returning to the country. I just took care of her a little. Why are you so unreasonable? Can't you be more considerate? You even called the police." Okay, Daisy, since you want to call the police, then I'll let Freya live in our house, and if you have the guts, don't come back." Leo couldn't stand it anymore, and grabbed my phone and started arguing with Max. "Dude, are you shameless? Your wife is pregnant and you're with another woman. Is she your mistress or your mother? Now that your wife has miscarried, you bring another woman home. Even the beggars on the street have nowhere to go. Why don't you give them some money?" I thought Max was stunned, but the next second he asked, "Who are you? Why are you with Daisy?" Leo laughed. "I'm your dad." After saying that, he hung up the phone and strongly urged me to get a divorce, right away. Max called me more than 10 times, but I didn't answer any of them. Before blocking him, I couldn't help but send him a message. "You haven't seen the child yet. It's a girl. I've left her at home. As the child's father, please give her a proper burial. And Max, I've never blamed Freya. My child wasn't killed by her, but by you." After clicking send, I ruthlessly blocked all of Max's contact information. I will personally deliver the divorce agreement to him. 6. Max was frantic when he saw my message. His eyes were bloodshot when he saw the red exclamation mark. Over the years we had been together, we had countless arguments, but we had never reached this point. He looked at the rows of black text and immediately got up to search everywhere. "Daughter," Daisy said it was a daughter. At this moment, Freya also noticed the gift box on the table. Her cheeks turned red, thinking it was a gift Max intended for her, so she opened the box on her own. Upon seeing the red thing inside, Freya screamed and threw the box on the ground. Max came out of the bedroom when he heard the sound. Freya was scared and looked at Max with teary eyes like a quail. "Max, this is..." As it turned out, the formed meatball that was originally lying in the packaging box was cruelly thrown on the ground by Freya. It was so small that it could be held in one hand. Max's eyes instantly turned red, and he roared at Freya like a mad lion. "Who told you to throw it on the ground?" Freya was stunned. She looked at Max incredulously, unable to believe that Max would speak to her like that. As usual, her tears came easily. But this time, Max didn't even look at her, he just carefully held the meatball in the palm of his hand, and hot tears fell into his palm. He regretted it. He could have had a happy family. It was all his fault. 3 days later, Leo, as my lawyer, responsibly delivered the divorce agreement to Max's company. Max tore up the divorce agreement in front of his subordinates. His actions made Leo disdainful, accusing him of taking things for granted and regretting it when he lost them. Max recognized Leo's voice and realized that he was the person who had called me and scolded him that day. The two of them quickly started fighting. Someone in the company called the police, and both of them were taken away by the police. When I arrived, Max was still arguing with the police angrily. "He's the bastard who seduced my wife. You guys hurry up and arrest him." Leo sat calmly beside him. "Mr. Max, I'm Miss Daisy's lawyer, and although we are friends, we don't have the relationship you mentioned. If you continue to slander and defame me, I will sue you in my own name. What's going on?" I stood beside Leo, and when I saw that he wasn't badly injured, I breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing me, Max's eyes turned red, and he looked at me with a black eye, as if he was waiting for me to care about him. I just gave him a cold glance, and then solemnly said to the police, "Mr. Max, without any reason, assaulted my lawyer and slandered our relationship. I demand that the police give me an explanation." As soon as I finished speaking, the expectation in Max's eyes gradually dimmed. He was like a crystal sculpture that would shatter at a touch, looking at me pitifully. But this time, I wouldn't be soft-hearted. In the past, I would be so nervous if he had even a scratch on his hand. Now that he was looking at me so coldly, he finally realized that he was really going to lose me. After leaving the police station, Max stopped me first. His eyes were red, and he looked several years older. His beard was unshaven, and his suit was wrinkled. I had never seen Max like this. Really, he deserved it. Leo wanted to step forward to stop me, but I motioned for him to leave with my eyes. When Leo left, Max's eyes softened slightly. He pursed his lips. "What's your relationship with him?" I raised my eyes coldly. "Friends, but not the kind of friends you and Freya have." Mentioning Freya, Max looked a little ugly. "I know you have a misunderstanding about Freya, and I've also figured it out these days. I should have cut off my relationship with her a long time ago, Daisy. Believe me, we really don't have anything." "Max, don't you think it's too late for you to say this now?" "No." Max wanted to hug me, but I dodged perfectly. He was still unwilling to give up. "You love me, you still love me, don't you? I've already arranged for our daughter to be buried, let's not get divorced, okay? I'll compensate you for the rest of my life." He had lost a lot of weight, and his eyes were the same as when he watched Freya leave. I was captivated by his appearance at that time. But now, I just turned my head in disgust. 7. Max's breath hitched, and he laughed self-deprecatingly. "I know you don't want to see me now, but Daisy, we've been together for so many years, can you really give up on our relationship so easily?" Before he could finish, I coldly interrupted him. "Wasn't it you who gave up first? Max, do you think I'm stupid? All these years, you've been going abroad frequently, is it really for business or for Freya?" Max was stunned. He thought he had covered his tracks perfectly, but in fact, I had just turned a blind eye. "No. Daisy, listen to me. Max." At this moment, Freya, wearing a white dress, ran over. She glared at me viciously and touched her own belly triumphantly. "Daisy, I knew you couldn't let go of Max. What's the use of a divorce? It's just a trick for you to keep Max." Hearing this, Max, instead of getting angry, his eyes lit up. "Is that so? Daisy?" He took 2 steps forward and tried to grab my hand. Freya rushed over and pushed me on the shoulder. "If you want a divorce, then stay away from Max." Max was enraged by Freya's behavior. He grabbed Freya's arm and threw her to the ground. The love in his eyes had long since disappeared, replaced by impatience and disgust. Get lost. Who allowed you to touch Daisy? Freya fell to the ground in embarrassment. Where was the innocent look she had before? Seeing such a ridiculous scene, I found it really laughable. But the next second, blood flowed from between Freya's legs. She covered her stomach and groaned in pain on the ground. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she looked at Max unwillingly, biting her lips. Max. Max rolled his eyes at her. Don't pretend, if it weren't for you, Daisy and I wouldn't have ended up like this. It's all your fault. Slap! I slapped Max across the face. He looked at me puzzled, with a hint of sadness in his eyes. I called 120 and sent Freya to the hospital, while Max was arrested again for intentional injury. 3 months passed in a blink of an eye. I had successfully obtained the divorce certificate. Leo was sitting opposite me, drinking the same cappuccino as me. He spread his hands and said, "That woman had a miscarriage and lost the baby, but she insisted that the child was Max's, saying that Max got her drunk when he went abroad some time ago and did that kind of thing. You should also be glad that if it weren't for her, Max wouldn't be able to leave with nothing." I smiled and took a sip of coffee. The bitter taste made my head clear. Freya was not a simple person either. No one knew whether the child was Max's or not, but the fact that both of them had cheated on their spouses was widely spread. Freya's ex-husband found out about this, came back from abroad and beat Freya up, and is now still in the hospital. As for Max, I sued him for divorce. It was enough for him to drink for cheating on his wife during the marriage and hurting her. In addition, he had an affair with Freya during the marriage, and Freya's ex-husband also sued him. He's going to spend a few years in jail for the rest of his life. I sold the house in this city and took a large sum of money back to my hometown, where I became the naive and innocent daughter in front of my parents again. Many times they wanted to introduce me to someone, but I refused them all. Men will only affect my enjoyment of life. It's better to be single without love. My good days have just begun.